All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott from Jeff Teaches Programming, and as you can see in the last couple of videos, we've started converting our BMI GUI application from an ADO.NET or ActiveX Data Object.NET application where we had to write a lot of the SQL ourselves to an entity framework one where hopefully we won't have to. All right, and we're going to go on, and the next thing we want to do here is we want to create a file. We want this file to be called BMIDBcontext.cs. So I'm going to come in here in my data folder, which is where I'd want it. I'm going to add. I want to add a new item. It'll be a class. So let's right mouse click on this, choose add class. Again, it'll be called BMI DBContext.cs. Okay, so there we've got that. Now, hopefully, so we had a lot of problems with this before, but I'm hoping at least. So if I come in here and I right mouse click and I come in here and I say, we did this before in here, we did an add project reference. We're going to have to add some in here. We don't need either of those, but I'm going to go down to com and I want to find some of my system. In fact, I should say Microsoft dot okay, I was hoping to come in here and add some like a using Microsoft Entity Framework Core, but I don't see it in here, which I don't really understand. See if we can find it any place. It's saying it doesn't find anything. Well, maybe if I go under browse, but I don't think that's going to matter. And if we do that, see, it says right now nothing found. No, because we can't go on. I'll tell you, I'll show you what we're going to put in here, but we're going to get all sorts of errors. All right. So this will be our entity framework core database context. All right. It's not a very big file, but again, we're going to get an error here, but it has to inherit from DB context. Like I said, we're going to get an error. And then let's just put in what we need here. Again, that'll have to be a public class rather than an internal class. Okay. And then we're going to say public DB set person entity we'll call it people, and it'll have a get set, and then we're going to put in protected override void on configuring DB context options builder options. And like I said, it's pretty short. Options.SQL server. Let's use SQL server. And then inside of parens, configuration manager, dot connection strings, and I believe we called it BMIGUIAppDatabaseEFPart03. Dot connection string. And then, believe it or not, that is everything. I need a semicolon on the end. And again, you can see all the errors I'm getting. And it's everywhere that I want to come in. And it says, are you missing a reference? Yes, I am. See, I don't want to generate something new. But I'm not sure what the problem is right now, but we'll look for it. But before we do that, let's just take a minute and talk about this. I had this up before. All right. Now notice what it says here. In order to use Entity Framework to query, meaning write select statements, insert, create statements, update statements, and delete statements, so you can use CRUD operations to query, insert, update, and delete data using these .NET objects that we're creating, you first need to create a model, as it says. It maps the entities and the relationships defined in the model to the actual database table. So what that means in English is, if you remember what we had done earlier in here, let's see, in here, we had made this person entity. And that's where we basically mirrored everything that we had done previously in a database table, but now we're doing it in an object. All right. And you can see now that one took the using system.component model, maybe because it was a system one, I don't know. I probably don't need any of the rest of these, at least right now. Leave it like that. All right. So with this last file that we just put in here, let's do a save all here, and let's bring the other one back up. So with this file right here, which I'm having troubles with, as you can see, what it is going to attempt to do, as it says, it's mapping what we put into that previous file to the fields that are in our table. And it says once you have a model, the primary class it interacts with is system.data.entity.db context. All right. Now, just out of curiosity here, because there's two files I need to put in here for using statements. And again, I'm going to get errors and I try to put them in right now. Don't need any of these, but I want to put in using Microsoft.entity framework core, which again is giving me an error because it can't find it, and using system.configuration. All right, so it gave me those two, and those worked okay. Or that one worked okay, but the other one did not. Not sure why I'm getting these errors right now. I thought that when I went to BMI library here, let's try it here. We go to dependencies. See, that's project references. That's the same thing we had before. It wasn't under projects. It wasn't under shared projects. It wasn't under COM. So if I go down to Microsoft here, there is no, under the E's, there is no entity framework that I can see that's in here. just going through the whole thing, but can't imagine that it'd be down here for any reason. No, and it's not. And the other one, the shared project reference, is the other thing that'll come up in here, as will the COM references. Now, maybe it's because what I need to do is I need to come back in here. Really, in here is the only place technically I needed to come in and actually bring in the entity framework stuff. So I'm going to try to bring it in here and see if that helps at all. So again, like we did before, I'm going to install Entity Framework Core version 8022. All right. Then I'm going to come in and do the SQL Server. Then I'm going to do the tools. Then I'm going to do the design. All right. Now, I don't know if that actually put those in here for dependencies. I don't know if that'll change anything when I come in here now and try to add project reference. It did not add them. So I'm going to have to check on that. But this is what I have left to do. All right. In my BMILib folder that we have in here, I can go on a little bit in here, but in here, the BMI library folder, not in data, but in here, I want to add a new iPerson repository. Notice I don't have an iPerson repository in here. I do right here. All right, but actually what I want in here is I want a new EFPerson repository that is going to inherit from this one. So let's come in here. Let's add a class. It will be EFPerson repository. All right, it will inherit from or implement iPerson repository. All right, we are going to make this public. And again, the reason we're getting these errors is it's telling us we don't have an add, we don't have a get people, we don't have a clear, and we don't have an is empty. So we have to add those. All right. And let's start doing that right now. Like we've done previously, we'll put a small comment in here. And it's going to just say entity, whoops, oh boy, entity framework core implementation of iPerson repository. All right. So let's start with add. Now remember, these are the errors we're getting right now. It says we don't have an add, we don't have a get people, we don't have a clear, we don't have an is empty. So let's start putting those in. So public void add perlic. All right. Oops, put that in already. Using What this is doing, and you can see we're getting errors in here, but what this is doing is it's going to allow us, with a little bit more code that we have to add, to be able to add a new person to the database. All right? My hope is that when I figure out what the problem is with these using statements, all this stuff is going to kind of click. All right. So this is get people. So in other words, this is going to allow us to return a list of what's in the database. You can see why we need the BMIDB context too. Now the using var, basically what that means is with the var is it's going to let the system figure out the data type here. There's some mistakes in here. Boy, oh boy. Good. All right, in English, what this is going to do is with this select statement, every time it finds a new record, it's going to create a new person. Okay, so it's going to be returning that person's first name, last name, height, weight, BMI, and status. So it's going to be working its way through the database and giving us back every one of our records. All right, so we need here public void clear. Again, the using var context. So you see why we need to have this thing, the DB context, working, because we're going to get nothing but errors otherwise. Equals new BMI DB context. This does exactly what you think it would do. All right. In other words, it's going to come in here and it's going to remove all the records that we have in there. Okay, that's going to be clearing it. And just like before, the code's a little different, but it's basically going to return whether or not the database is empty. In other words, there are no records in it. All right. Now we're making progress. One more thing I want to do here, and then we will stop with this particular lecture. And I want to add a helper method. And up on the top, we had a thing called map to entity, but we never wrote it. Okay. See the IntelliSense is kicking in here. And time that now. Or a comma here. I think that's it. And of course, we need a semicolon at the end of this. Okay, so I'm going to stop right now, see if I can come up and figure out what the problem is with this so I can get these errors out. Then I want to explain everything that's in here. So I'll be back with that very shortly.